Hello, and welcome to another educational video about screen printing by Catspit Productions. Today's video is about tips and pointers on burning screens at home, because I know a lot of my viewers, a lot of the people in my audience work at home and they use these work lamps to expose their screens. So I wanted to give a couple of tips on that. First of all, one of the most important things when you're burning your screens, if you can do this at all, is make sure that your film is opaque, meaning 100% dense, no light goes through the artwork parts, the image areas on your film. Okay, so that's an important thing. Try to work with good quality film that's very opaque. That means dense. Okay, if you can hold your film up to the light and you can see that light through the black printed area, whether it's toner or inkjet, then that means that some of the light during your exposure is going to be curing the emulsion. So you want to try to have really good film. Okay. Also, when working with these particular units, take the piece of glass out, because sometimes I understand that many of these units have UV filters in the glass. So if you take that out, the UV output will be higher from this individual unit. Okay? And also, be sure that when you're working with one of these types of lights, there's a lot of heat generated from this light. Make sure that the heat isn't baking the emulsion during exposure, because if you expose emulsion to excessive heat, on the screen during the exposure, it could also cure it and cause it to not wash out. Okay, so just the heat alone can be a problem. So be careful that you're not baking them. Now, another thing you can do to help, I think, at home with burning screens with a light like this is use a dual cure emulsion, because it has a wider exposure latitude. It's going to take a longer time to expose, but you have a wider exposure latitude, which is going to help you with inferior light sources and or inferior films. Okay, so just remember, the dual cures are going to be slower, but have a wider exposure latitude. The photopolymers, like this is a photopolymer. This is going to have a smaller exposure latitude, but it's going to be a lot faster, and it really works best with nice film, nice dense opaque film. And another thing you can do at home, if you guys are having trouble burning screens, getting detail and stuff like that, try to move up in mesh count. If you're working on a 110 mesh can be, often difficult to work with when you're a beginner. Trying to get detail out on a 110 is not necessarily as easy as it would be on a 155 or a 195. So maybe step up in your mesh count. Okay? And remember, emulsions react to UV light. Okay, so you want your light source to have a high UV output. So a unit like this exposure unit with which we looked at before, that has the industrial black lamps, has a high UV output. This doesn't have as much of a UV output. But the difference between the two is this is what you would call a point source, meaning that it's one light source for exposure. And my unit here with the multiple fluorescent bulbs obviously is a multiple source. So there's what they call undercutting and diffusion that happens with a unit like this, which can give a little bit of problems with detail. They're not as good as getting detail as a point source. And they do make professional exposure units with point source metal halide type bulbs that are very powerful, nothing like this, that have the proper UV, and they work really fast. They're really good. They actually have an aperture, a camera aperture over the bulb. And when you turn on the unit, the bulb heats up and stays on, and then this little shutter opens and exposes the screen, So it's pretty cool. So that's a good point to remember, is that point source exposure units are going to be better for detail than your multiple bulb source. I think that's about it. For all of you guys who are working at home, if you have any tips or advice for other people, feel free to leave them in the comments. Let us know what you're doing at home. What works for you? All right, and thanks again for watching Catspit Productions educational videos. I really appreciate it. Please rate 5 stars, comment, and always subscribe. Thanks for watching.